The last 24 hours around Shedeur Sanders have been so chaotic, so completely out of control that even veteran insiders are calling it one of the wildest moments in recent Browns history. And the craziest part? Nobody seems to agree on what's falling apart faster, the situation around him on the field or the madness unfolding away from it. Rumors are flying, insiders are sounding alarms, and unexpected details keep surfacing about what really happened behind the scenes in Cleveland. Something is clearly wrong, and the deeper you look, the darker the picture becomes. What started as a simple quarterback debate just turned into a full-blown storm that exposes far more than anyone expected. And the truth behind it all is far more unsettling than what fans saw on Sunday. Reports began circulating shortly after the Ravens game that while Shedeur Sanders was standing on an NFL field for the very first time, 3 intruders were caught on security footage moving through his home with the kind of calm confidence that suggests they knew exactly when to strike. The timing alone feels unsettling. Sanders was hundreds of miles away, buried in the chaos of his unexpected debut, while these men slipped through his property with bags in their hands and zero urgency in their steps. It wasn't random, and it didn't look impulsive. It felt calculated, almost rehearsed, like they'd studied the schedule and waited for the perfect moment when the house would be empty. The footage, shared online by someone close to the situation, shows them wandering through his rooms as if they'd been there before, sifting through belongings with a casualness that turns your stomach. Nothing rushes them, nothing startles them. They move like people who believe they won't get caught. And that's what makes this even more disturbing. This wasn't just a break-in, it was a violation of safety, privacy, and trust at a moment when Sanders had everything else on his mind. For a rookie already dealing with the pressure of an NFL debut, finding out afterward that strangers were inside his home adds a psychological punch most players never prepare for. It's the kind of violation that lingers long after the stolen items are replaced. And the worst part? This isn't some isolated incident. Over the last several months, multiple NFL players have reported similar situations, leading many to believe that organized groups are tracking game day schedules and targeting athletes when they're away. Nothing about that pattern feels accidental. Sanders entered that Ravens game with 0 first-team reps, a playbook built around another quarterback, and the weight of an entire fan base analyzing every snap. But while he was trying to survive one of the toughest defenses in football, his home was being quietly ransacked by people who saw his dream moment as their opportunity. And as shocking as that sounds, it was only the beginning of the chaos that surrounded him that day. What made this entire situation explode even further is that the chaos off the field wasn't happening in a vacuum. Behind closed doors, the Browns were already dealing with a quarterback dilemma unlike anything else in the league. Instead of having a veteran backup who understands NFL pace and can survive limited practice time, Cleveland went into the season with 2 rookies, both raw, both developmental, both needing reps that simply didn't exist. On paper, it looked like a creative long-term plan. In reality, it created a silent crisis no one inside the building wanted to acknowledge. Every team in the NFL has routines built around the starter getting nearly all of the first-team work during the week. That's normal. That's standard. But what's not normal is expecting a young quarterback to take over on a moment's notice when he's never taken a snap with the starters, never thrown to the top receivers in a real practice setting, and never even had a chance to build basic chemistry with the offense he's supposed to run. It's one thing to be a backup. It's another thing entirely to be a backup in name only, with none of the preparation that the role requires. Inside the Browns facility, that tension had reportedly been building for weeks. Coaches were locked into their routine. Players were quietly confused about the lack of reps being shared. And fans were starting to wonder why a team sitting near the bottom of the league standings was so reluctant to adjust anything. The situation felt rigid, stubborn, and strangely resistant to common sense. As the losses piled up and frustration grew, people close to the team began whispering that the setup didn't make any sense for either rookie. One was being overloaded with responsibility, and the other was being starved of it. And as soon as Sanders stepped onto that field in Baltimore, every flaw in that plan was exposed in real time. But the real turning point, the moment that took this from quiet confusion to full-blown organizational controversy, came when the most trusted voice in Cleveland finally decided she'd seen enough. Mary Kay Cabot wasn't just reporting anymore, she was sounding an alarm. And what she revealed made it clear that this crisis wasn't an accident. It was a failure that insiders saw coming long before it happened. When Mary Kay Cabot finally weighed in, the entire conversation around Shedeur Sanders shifted. She isn't some outsider tossing opinions from a distance. She's the insider who has covered this franchise for decades, the reporter who's earned a reputation for accuracy, caution, and never saying more than she means. So when she spoke up, people listened. And what she said wasn't just criticism, it was the kind of blunt, surgical breakdown that only someone deeply familiar with the Browns' inner workings could deliver. During a recent appearance, she was asked whether the Browns should have given Sanders even a small share of first-team reps throughout the season. Her answer wasn't hesitant or diplomatic, it was immediate, it was firm, and it carried the weight of experience. 100% they should have. No softening, no hedging, just a direct call-out that hit the organization like a punch to the ribs. Mary Kay didn't stop there. She explained that while most NFL backups barely touch first-team reps, this situation was completely different. Cleveland wasn't dealing with a seasoned veteran who could survive on mental reps alone. They had a rookie behind another rookie, two players learning the league at the exact same time, both needing live chemistry with the starters and both requiring development that the standard model simply couldn't provide. Treating Sanders like a veteran backup made no sense, and she said so outright. What made her breakdown even more striking was the revelation that she had already predicted this mess months earlier. She'd written a column suggesting Sanders might actually be better off not being the number 2 quarterback because the Browns weren't going to prepare him for that role. She saw the problem forming while the season was still young, and she publicly warned that the team was setting him up for failure without realizing it, or worse, without caring. For a reporter known for measured language, this level of direct criticism was shocking. Mary Kay rarely aims her words at the coaching staff unless something has gone seriously wrong. And in her eyes, this wasn't just an oversight. It was a clear, avoidable mistake that the organization walked into with its eyes open. Her assessment didn't just expose what went wrong. It forced the entire fan base to confront a harder truth. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't unfortunate timing. According to her analysis, this was the product of decisions that were questionable from the start. And while her comments shook the Browns community, they also opened the door to another layer of the story, what Sanders' own teammates noticed during that chaotic debut, and what it revealed about how unprepared he truly was. Jeudy didn't mince words when he talked about what he saw from Shedeur Sanders during that chaotic debut, and his perspective hit harder than anyone expected. As one of the key receivers Sanders was supposed to rely on, Jeudy admitted something that instantly revealed how unprepared the situation truly was. He had never caught a single pass from Sanders before that game. Not in practice, not in warm-ups, not even in a casual drill. Their very first live rep together came against one of the most aggressive defenses in the league, under bright lights with the entire football world watching. Jeudy said Sanders started the game understandably tense, the kind of tight, uncomfortable energy you'd expect from a rookie thrown into a storm without warning. But what stood out wasn't the shaky start, it was how quickly things changed. According to Jeudy, once Sanders settled in and finally got a feel for the speed, rhythm, and timing of the offense, his confidence began to grow. Every snap seemed to pull him a little further out of that initial fog. Every throw started to carry more conviction. Jeudy saw a kid who was trying to fight his way into the moment instead of folding under it. He pointed to one moment in the third quarter where Sanders seemed to flip a switch. Jeudy said it felt like Sanders suddenly understood that the only way out was through, that mistakes were going to happen, but the game wouldn't slow down for him, so he had to adjust. That mindset, coming from a rookie in the middle of a meltdown around him, told Jeudy something important. This wasn't a player who was overwhelmed by pressure. It was a player trying to climb out of a hole someone else dug for him. Even more telling was the way Jeudy talked about Sanders' poise on the final drive. Despite the lack of chemistry, despite the hostile crowd, despite the Ravens' defense coming after him with everything they had, Sanders almost tied the game. Jeudy didn't see a quarterback who was lost. He saw someone who could absolutely do this if he were given the kind of preparation every backup quarterback is supposed to have. Jeudy's insight didn't just defend Sanders, it quietly exposed a deeper problem. The kid showed flashes of real potential in the middle of pure chaos, which only raises a bigger, more uncomfortable question. If he looked that composed under the worst circumstances imaginable, what could he have looked like with even a fraction of the support he should have received? And that's where this story stops being about one bad debut, because Jeudy's comments didn't just highlight Sanders' resilience, they highlighted the coaching decisions that put him in that impossible spot to begin with. The deeper you look into how the Browns handled their quarterbacks, the harder it becomes to ignore the pattern that insiders, players, and even fans have been pointing out for weeks. Cleveland didn't just mishandle a rookie. They created a setup where one young quarterback received everything he needed to grow, while the other was left with scraps. And in a league where preparation is everything, that imbalance can bury a player before he ever has a chance to breathe.
But the Browns weren't dealing with a veteran. They had another rookie. Raw, inexperienced, and still learning how fast the NFL moves. Treating Sanders like a plug-and-play veteran didn't just stretch logic, it ignored the entire reality of what a rookie quarterback actually needs to function. The simplest issue was also the most damaging. He never took meaningful snaps with the starters. That means no chemistry with the receivers he was supposed to throw to, no timing with the linemen who needed to hear his cadence, no rhythm inside an offense designed around someone else's tendencies. Even a handful of live reps each week could have changed his debut completely. Instead, he stepped onto the field with zero familiarity and a playbook that wasn't tailored to him in the slightest. And that's where another layer of this story begins to surface, one that people around the team have whispered about since training camp. Some reports suggested that Dillon Gabriel was viewed internally as the guy, the quarterback the coaching staff believed in, developed, and prioritized. Meanwhile, Sanders was seen more as a long-term project tied to organizational decisions above the coaching level. While nothing officially confirms this divide, the way reps were distributed added fuel to the idea that the staff saw one rookie as their future and treated the other like an afterthought. If that dynamic is even partially true, then it explains why the offensive game plan never had a backup package built around Sanders' skill set. Every route combination, every protection call, every designed movement catered to Gabriel's strengths. So when Sanders checked into the game, he wasn't running the Browns' offense, he was running Gabriel's offense, without Gabriel's reps, Gabriel's chemistry, or Gabriel's preparation. That's not just a disadvantage, that's a stacked deck. And the result was exactly what any experienced coach would have predicted. A rookie trying to manage NFL chaos with tools that weren't built for him, surrounded by players who had never taken a single meaningful rep with him. In situations like that, it's not the quarterback who fails, it's the structure around him that collapses first. What made this breakdown even worse is how avoidable it all was. With a 2-10 record and nothing left to lose, the Browns had every reason in the world to split reps, experiment with development, and prepare both rookies for real playing time. Instead, they doubled down on a one-quarterback approach that left Sanders blindfolded in a dark room and expected him to navigate his way out. Jeudy's comments proved Sanders had enough raw talent to hang in the fight. Mary Kay's evaluation proved the preparation wasn't there, and the way the Browns split their reps proved the organization never adjusted, even when the season spiraled. The end result wasn't an accident. It was the natural consequence of a plan that never made sense in the first place. And the fallout from that decision is only beginning, because the damage this did to Sanders' development may linger far longer than one disastrous afternoon. The fallout from this situation reaches far beyond one bad game, because in the NFL, a quarterback's first impression can linger for years. Casual fans who didn't know much about Shedeur Sanders before Baltimore now think they've seen the full story, when in reality, they only witnessed the outcome of a setup that was broken from the start. That debut, rushed and unprepared, risks becoming the label people attach to him, even though it says more about the circumstances than the player. And once a narrative forms in this league, shaking it off becomes its own uphill battle. Sanders now carries the weight of being judged on a performance that never should have happened in those conditions. That kind of unfair spotlight affects more than public perception. It affects confidence. When a young quarterback feels thrown into chaos without support, it can stall development, slow progress, and create hesitation where there should be growth. The mental reset after something like that isn't easy, especially when the same system that left him unprepared is still the one guiding his future. There's also the long-term question of how this will shape Sanders' place within the organization. When a coaching staff shows through their actions that one rookie is being groomed while the other is being sidelined, it sends a message players can feel even if it's never said out loud. If Sanders believes he isn't being positioned for success, the relationship between player and team can quietly fracture. And history has shown that once trust begins to erode, careers often drift toward new opportunities elsewhere. Beyond the personal impact, this situation exposes cracks in the Browns' long-term planning. Any team hoping to develop young quarterbacks needs a structure that gives them equal opportunities to grow. Cleveland didn't do that, and now they're left with a rookie who has raw talent, flashes of poise under pressure, and a fan base wondering whether he'll ever get a fair chance to show what he can truly become. The most unsettling part is that this could have been prevented. A few first-team reps, a small package of plays tailored to his skill set, a plan that recognized the unique dynamic of having two rookies in the same room. Instead, the organization watched a situation they created unfold exactly the way many insiders warned it would. And now the consequences are sitting on Sanders' shoulders while the coaching staff shrugs off accountability. This wasn't just a rough debut. It was a moment that could shape the direction of his career, for better or for worse. And how the Browns respond in the coming weeks will determine whether this becomes the story of a young quarterback held back by circumstance or the beginning of a turnaround that finally gives him the support he deserves.
Inside his home, and whether they would come back. That kind of fear doesn't leave quickly, and it can follow a player long after the cameras turn away. This growing trend has sparked conversations throughout the NFL about whether teams and the league itself are doing enough to protect players. Some believe there should be league-funded security upgrades. Others argue for better coordination with local law enforcement. But what everyone agrees on is simple. Players shouldn't have to fear for their homes while they're at work. And the fact that this issue is spreading so quickly shows how urgent the problem has become. Sanders may be the latest victim, but unless the NFL treats these incidents as more than isolated events, he won't be the last. And that's what makes his experience so unsettling, because his story isn't just about Cleveland. It's about a league-wide vulnerability that keeps growing in the shadows, affecting players long after the final whistle blows. What happens next in Cleveland will reveal far more about the Browns than anything that has happened on the field this season. With the team sitting in a lost year and 5 games left to play, this should be the moment where an organization reassesses its direction, resets its priorities, and finally starts making decisions with the future in mind. But whether the Browns take that opportunity or let it slip away will determine not only Shedeur Sanders' development, but the trajectory of the entire franchise. The first and most obvious question is what the Browns will do at quarterback moving forward. If Dylan Gabriel clears concussion protocol and the coaches immediately hand the job back to him without considering Sanders' growth, it sends a clear signal that nothing has changed. It would mean the staff is more invested in defending their original evaluations than in using the rest of the season to discover what they actually have in both young quarterbacks. And that kind of stubbornness is how teams stay stuck in mediocrity. But if the Browns finally decide to give Sanders a full week of first-team reps, real timing with the receivers, real rhythm with the starting line, real preparation tailored to what he does well, it could flip the entire narrative. It wouldn't erase what happened in Baltimore, but it would give him a fair chance to show the version of himself fans never got to see. Even insiders who've been critical believe Sanders has the raw ability to compete if he's not thrown into chaos. The question is whether the coaching staff is willing to put ego aside and actually test that theory. There's also the growing conversation around the coaching staff itself. When respected voices like Mary Kay Cabot openly criticize the preparation process, it forces the organization to confront issues it would rather ignore. If leadership views this as an isolated mistake, nothing will change. But if they recognize the pattern, mismanaged reps, mismatched game plans, and questionable development strategies, they may face a far bigger decision about whether this staff is capable of guiding two young quarterbacks at the same time. The fan base feels that tension too. Browns fans aren't just watching losses. They're watching a season where answers should be forming, but instead everything feels murkier. Sanders showed resilience under impossible circumstances. Gabriel has struggled to establish himself as the long-term option, and the coaching staff's decisions have left everyone guessing what the actual plan is. A franchise can survive losing. What it can't survive is a future built on confusion. If Cleveland uses these final weeks wisely, they could walk into the offseason with clarity, a better sense of Sanders' potential, a clearer evaluation of Gabriel, and a real understanding of which direction to build around. But if they continue down the same path, protecting old decisions, ignoring developmental needs, and writing off Sanders' struggles as his own fault, they risk damaging a quarterback who still hasn't been given a fair shot. The reality is simple. The Browns don't just need to decide who their quarterback is. They need to decide what kind of organization they want to be. One that adapts when the plan isn't working, or one that doubles down until opportunities slip through their fingers. Sanders' future hangs in that balance, and so does the future of a franchise desperate to break the cycle of disappointment. Which direction they choose next will tell the entire story. The story surrounding Shedeur Sanders has become far more than a debate about a rookie quarterback. It's a snapshot of a franchise wrestling with its own identity, a reminder of how quickly potential can be buried under chaos, and a warning about how fragile a young player's path can become when the system around him breaks down. In one weekend, Sanders faced pressure on the field, turmoil behind the scenes, and a violation of his home that no player, rookie or veteran, should ever have to experience. And somehow, through all of it, he still managed to show flashes of the poise and talent that once made him one of the most intriguing prospects in his class. The real question now isn't what went wrong, it's what happens next. Does Cleveland learn from the missteps, adjust its approach, and finally commit to developing both of its young quarterbacks the right way? Or does the organization fall back into old habits, protecting the decisions that led them here and leaving Sanders to carry the weight of circumstances he never created? Every insider comment, every coaching decision, every snap in these final games will start pointing toward the answer. Because this isn't just a football story anymore. It's a turning point. One that could either mark the beginning of Sanders' rise or the moment the Browns let another opportunity slip away. And as the dust settles from the wildest stretch Cleveland has seen in years, one thing is clear. Whatever comes next won't just shape a season. It will shape careers, reputations, and the future of a franchise still searching for stability in a league that doesn't wait for anyone to figure it out. The only thing left now is to watch what Cleveland does with the moment that's staring them in the face, and whether they're finally ready to make the hard decisions that change everything.